Hello, fellow detectives. Welcome to Unlocked, the official podcast for all things Nancy Drew by Her Interactive. I am your host, Tammy Tuckey, and this week we welcome voiceover artist Katherine Grant-Suttie to the show. Welcome, Katherine.
Thank you for having me, Tammy.
You are like the triple threat. You voiced 3 different characters for Nancy Drew. Look at you.
Yeah, it's been pretty fun. I look forward to voicing more. I haven't gotten a call in a while. I'd love to reprise probably Ryan. I'd love to reprise Ryan or Dagny, but I'm always game to do the new characters. They're always it's so much fun to just build something fresh.
What was your evolution into working in the voiceover industry overall?
Oh my God. So I started in theater. I got my degree in drama, like a lot of actors. And I had done, it was kind of, it happened with a friend. I had done a theater piece, and I was out on the West Coast, and she was actually back in New York, and she asked me, we had worked together before, and she asked me if I would voice a promo spot for the company she was working with. The company happened to be the Rodgers and Hammerstein estate. So it was like a little promo for their like artistic package. So when a regional theater does a Rodgers and Hammerstein show, they can buy this art and promo package. So I ended up voicing, kind of as a favor for her, that spot, and then I just kind of got interested from there and started taking classes, and so that's kind of how I got into voiceover. More recently, it's always kind of been on the back burner, but only recently have I really kind of put it front row center and being like, okay, we're going all in. We're gonna make this our focus. Honestly, I have yet to have the pleasure of voicing video games that much. Nancy Drew to date has been the only video game I've voiced. I've voiced a couple of commercials. Actually, since Nancy Drew, because Nancy Drew was actually part of that on-ramp process of me getting more and more interested in voiceover, because that first experience of booking the role, rehearsing and then going into the studio, it was just such a fun, laid back, and very creative experience. I was like, oh God, I gotta do more of this. So, I've done some motion capture for some video games, mostly kind of prototype, pre-production stage things, but I've never actually gotten to voice any other video games, which I would love to do, and because the Nancy Drew experience was just so much fun. I've done a Alaska USA radio commercial, and I did kind of an internal thing for Adidas, and then, just a couple kind of corporate things here and there. So, yeah.
How did you hear about the first game that you worked on, which was The Deadly Device as Ryan Kilpatrick? Was there an open call, or?
It was kind of an open call. I wish I had a more exciting story for how I got into the Nancy Drew games. But it really was just it wasn't listed as Nancy Drew. It was kind of just non-union video game or computer game audition, looking for parts for all ages, because they were casting the entire show. And it came through on a local audition listing in Seattle, which I happened to be living in at the time. And, I submitted that Rodgers and Hammerstein thing that I had gotten, and I submitted a couple kind of, recorded on it wasn't a phone, but it was kind of a janky little voice recorder, and threw that in and got called in for Ryan. I think we actually had an in-person callback, which was very cool. Got to meet Nick and who's the main woman at the time, the main producer, and then got Ryan from there. And that was such a fun time and fun experience. And then I kept kind of harassing them whenever I heard, whenever like an audition that I saw, I was like, oh, I bet you that's, whenever an unnamed video game came down the pipeline, I would email them personally being like, is this your audition? Can I come in again and try something? Or they would just kind of call me out of the blue saying, hey, we've got a thing. Do you want to do it? And I was like, yes, absolutely. So yeah, that's kind of how that happened. Because it was super fun to be in the studio and have Nick for the first 2 games, and then I think her name was Kate Cronus, doing the directing in the studio. It's something that's increasingly rare as a voiceover actor. A lot of times we're doing remote patch-in, or we're just kind of sending the file and having to do a lot of self-direction.
So how did they prepare you for Ryan Kilpatrick for the Deadly Device in particular? Did they give you a background, or did they just give you the sides to work on from there?
I think we talked through her a little bit during the callback session. But once I got it, they gave me the majority of the scripts that pertains to Ryan, and she's, they're all of the characters that I've had the pleasure of working with are they're, and I don't want to say self-explanatory, but they're well written enough that you can there's a lot to grab onto and go with, and whatever isn't implicit in the artwork or in the script, you can kind of fill in and go from there. So we didn't have that much rehearsal. We just had a couple chats, and they gave me the script, and then in the studio we went through it quite, we spent a good chunk of time going through it, in person, on the fly, that sort of fun stuff.
And really quickly, I just want to mention to our listeners, we will be getting into spoiler territory at this point with some of the questions. So if you haven't played The Deadly Device or Labyrinth of Lies or Sea of Darkness, go ahead and, pause our interview, go ahead and play them. But to get right into it, with The Deadly Device in particular, you get to, which is unusual for other voiceover actors who are not the culprit, you get to know who it is because you directly have to help Nancy figure out what to do from there and to help her, save the day. So when you found out who the culprit was, how far in the game was that for you? Was that the second time you came in to record, or was that the first time?
We only recorded once. So that was day of, and I needed to know that she wasn't the culprit. I as an actor wasn't so focused on the narrative of the whodunit necessarily, but I was having a lot more fun. There goes the dogs. I was having a lot more fun with building Ryan's kind of frenetic, warm-hearted but spastic personality, and then just trying to build that relationship with Nancy, i.e. the player. But what was just fun for me was just building that, particularly that first scene when you meet Ryan and it's like, surprise! I'm a total nut job, but I really, really like you really much, and I hope you like me too, and we're gonna make it happen,
She's so relatable that way. I love it.
Yeah. She's definitely a fun character, and she's definitely one of those characters that people can identify with. She's like she strikes me a little bit as the mechanic in Firefly. She's she's a mechanic. She's an explosives expert. She's so smart in certain ways, and she's so clueless in others, and that's just fun to play with.
For me, it was interesting to see you jump from such a upbeat, quirky character, Ryan, to Niobe in Labyrinth of Lies, because she's very toned down and she has an accent. So what was the initial direction with this character when they were looking for her voice?
The voice was challenging, I will be honest. I don't even think now, looking back through it, that I may have nailed down the Greek accent entirely. So for all of the Greek players out there, I'm sorry if I may have butchered the accent. But maybe because I was laboring on the accent so much, it kind of naturally restricted me. I, as an actor, was focused so much on trying to make sure that accent was as correct as I could get it in the time frame that I was given, which was about 2 weeks. So I think that kind of helped hold Niobe in. There's still a lot going on with Niobe. There's a lot of divergent. She's a very conflicted character. There's a lot of things going on underneath the surface, but it's just, so there is a lot of that same quick thinking that you encounter with Ryan, but there's just a lid put on it. She's a little pressure cooker. That's easy, I could relate to that and kind of play with that. And also know that the time between the two games was, I think, a year. So it wasn't like I was jumping in from Ryan to Niobe. I think I had actually gotten to play a veteran. I was in a theatrical play in which I was playing a veteran, an army veteran with PTSD. So like someone who has a lot of conflict just beneath the surface that cannot let it loose, or else, things will go wrong.
She's not really a black or white character. She has so many different dynamics with her, and she knows what's right and she knows what's wrong. She wasn't the culprit in the way that we usually typically look at things. So basically she was a very dynamic character in that game, because it was a very complicated, different type of game where it was almost like an Agatha Christie ending where everybody's in on it, which we usually don't get from a game.
And you can't play someone, even if they are ultimately the baddie, you can't play someone with that judgment that they're the baddie. Everyone is doing the best that they think, everyone is doing the best that they can, doing what they think is right with the information and skill set that they have. And that's what Niobe was doing. She believed that she was doing what she, according to her ethics and according to what she thought was right, and trying to move in a positive direction with the resources that she had. And you can argue whether, from the wider perspective of whether that was really the best choice of action, but a very complicated inner life, and she was very conflicted, and that there was a lot of depth to her, which is great. And I'm just so pleased that came across, because, in the studio, I was just trying to go from thinking as fast as she was without getting too hyper and keeping the accent in check all at the same time.
So obviously you're still performing, right? So what are your latest projects that you're working on that our listeners can check out, and your website too?
Oh, well, by all means, check out my website, KatherineGrant-Suttie.com. It's more of a pit stop for industry people, I guess, potential employers and stuff, as opposed to fans. Though I do appreciate the traffic. But currently, my boyfriend and I have a production company, Battleground Productions, and we have been working on this massive multi-platform media project for now 2-3 years called Brass. And Brass is a steampunk adventure serial. So it takes place as a series of short films. We've done some live shows for it. He's actually writing, he got hired to write a interactive, immersive dinner theater murder mystery that we'll be doing in April, which should be hilarious and fun. And then, so within this Brass world, it's about a family of science geniuses during the Victorian era, kind of serving as agents to the crown. And I get to play the daughter, Gwendolyn, who is a mistress of disguise. She's a genius at social manipulation. And she's a fighter, but she also has a terrible luck with men. She keeps getting involved with these bizarre men who are, like we have a Tarzan-like character who has a brief romantic relationship with that just falls apart. And so she's been super fun to play for the past 2 or 3 years. But we're doing a podcast. So we're on season 2 of the audio drama, of the podcast drama of Brass. And so you can check that out wherever you get your podcasts. So yeah, we're reaching out on all platforms. And that's kind of the main thing right now that's driving forward that you can definitely partake in. We just published episode 15, which was super fun. It has probably one of my favorite characters in it, Mrs. Drake, who's this ninja-like housekeeper. She's like Mrs. Doubtfire, but with nunchucks. So that's a project that is kind of out and about and people can enjoy. I am personally, just doing the actor hustling for auditions and projects. And I'm personally kind of working up towards a short action film.
It's so cool to see your videos on your site as well, because you do a lot of motion capture. So listeners, go ahead and check out her site. I'll put it in the show notes below and you can check it out yourself and see what Katherine's been up to, because it's pretty awesome that you get to live this type of dream and work these type of jobs.
I mean, they're kind of few and far between. There's definitely a lot of work in between the jobs of getting the jobs and holding on to the jobs. But when you get the opportunities to actually book the role, book the characters, and go into the studio to record a voiceover or get into the suit to capture some performance and movement capture, it's stupid fun. It's so much fun.
I love it. No, I'm so happy for you, and I really do hope one of your characters, Ryan or Dagny, it would be great to see them revisited in a future game. If they're not visually there, maybe on the phone.
What if they both met together? What if it was like Dagny versus Ryan? It would be like, oh my god, I would have to like go low, go high, go fast, go slow. That'd be super fun.
Definitely yin and yang there. I don't know if their personalities would clash, because I feel like Dagny would be like, no nonsense.
Yeah, it would be the sort of thing where something bad would happen, and then Ryan would be like, what do we do, and run around with her like a chicken with her head cut off, and then Dagny would be like, stop her and like shut her mouth with her hand and be like, no, this is what we're doing.
Oh my gosh.
And then it'd be,
I hope so. I really do. And thank you so much for being on the show. This was a lot of fun to chat with you finally. Catherine and I have been trying to chat for so long now.
I know. Time zones and schedules and snow and thank you for
ends.
Time. Yeah.
Well, if you could describe your experience working with Her Interactive and being a part of the Nancy Drew universe using one word, what would that be?
Cinnamon. Yeah, cinnamon. It's like warming. It's warming and it's wholesome, but it's also spicy. And yeah,